You've got mail. So I want to talk about bandwidth today, but I don't want to talk about communication bandwidth. I want to talk about human bandwidth. There are similarities between human bandwidth and communication bandwidth. So for example, communication bandwidth passes on messages, mostly in digital format. But human bandwidth can pass on a lot more things. As you'll find out, it can pass on money, it can pass on time, it can pass on happiness, and it can pass on love. But first, let's do a little math. The Shannon-Hawley formula for channel is above me, and that says that our channel equals bandwidth times the log of 2, and those of us in the room who remember slide rule might remember what that is, times 1 plus signal over noise. Sounds a little familiar maybe, but let's talk about what that means. Channel is what our ability is to transmit ideas, or to transmit love, or to transmit happiness. Our bandwidth, which I'll get into shortly, is the composition of how we do that. Our signal is what we're sending as our message, and our noise is what complexes the message. Think of your lives right now. You have noise. Coming down here today, a little bit of traffic noise perhaps, or we had the noise of construction, or we have the noise of children trying to find out what they're supposed to be doing while texting each other at the table. So all of these things come together to form our human channel. Now, of course, we can increase our channel by doing one of three things. We increase our bandwidth, we increase or improve our signal, or we decrease our noise. Now, it seems fundamental that if we take a look at what our signal is, it's what our message is. What our noise is getting rid of the static in our life. So let's talk about the bandwidth itself. Bandwidth has 4 primary components in the human body. We have money, which is a bandwidth to get us the medium of exchange. We have time, of course, and time and money, by the way, are more than just 2 Pink Floyd hits. Time and money basically are interrelated to each other. So take work. Work is when you exchange time for money. Take leisure. Leisure is when you exchange money for time. That is not always correlated, by the way. I remember as a CPA, I once worked 108 billable hours. A laudable goal in 1 week, 108 hours a week. Try figuring that out, how to do that. It basically meant I worked, showered, and went back to work. Now the next component of bandwidth is happiness. I will not even try to have you realize that happiness is not necessarily a function of time and money. However, they relate to each other. Think of your mother. What did Mom always say? Money doesn't buy happiness. And what did we think? It helps. Then there's love. And of course, love can be completely unrelated to each of the other issues. In fact, having been in love and still being in love, I can tell you that it occupies an enormous amount of time and can burn up a whole bunch of bandwidth and even be a frustrating experience. However, all of these together form our bandwidth. Now, why is this important? Because the concept of human bandwidth is to take us into something that I call abundance and scarcity. The more bandwidth we have, the more abundance we create. The more noise we have, or the narrower our bandwidth, the more scarcity. Consider people in poverty. To them, losing $100 is a tragedy. It's a monumental, colossal loss to them. What happens if they lose an hour of time or they can't go to a job interview? It's terrible. It's terrifying. It is ending their lives. What happens to somebody who is affluent or has the ability to be affluent in time? No problem. I miss an hour. I get a flat tire on the lodge. So what? I call AAA. They come in, fix the tire. I email my friends on my email. I'm set. Abundance and scarcity are opposites of each other. So what we're trying to do is increase our bandwidth. Without going into more math, let me take us back to what our math teacher might have told us. Our math teacher would tell us that if we increase the radius of a circle, that the area of the circle increases by pi r squared. Tiny increases in bandwidth have monumental increases in the volume of our band. Small example, auto bill pay. Go to auto bill pay and what happens? You no longer have to write out the check. Small cash savings. You don't have to use a stamp. Better cash savings. No envelope. Better cash savings again. Takes less time. But more importantly, you don't have to do something annoying. Pay a bill. But that's a minor example. What if I told you, use your time bandwidth a little more carefully? We hear the terms money management. We hear the terms time management. What if I told you on midnight of every day I gave you $86,400, but it diminished at $1 a second, and by next midnight it would be gone? You can't manage time. 86,400 are the number of seconds in every day. So if I take that situation and I say, okay, what am I going to do to manage time and money? I say, what if you got up an hour early and you worked on your blog? Or you wrote a love letter? Or you worked on your cause? Or you took some of the things that we've heard from other TED speakers and did those kinds of things? That is an effective use of bandwidth. So we're looking at bandwidth in terms of its time, money relationships. We're looking at bandwidth in terms of its happiness and love relationships. Let's get to the bottom line of why this is important in overall. Why would we increase our bandwidth? You can say, well, Leon's telling me that perhaps I should increase my time and I could get more efficiency out of my time. Or perhaps I should be smarter with my money. I could get more efficiency out of my money. But I want you to think about how these are interrelated. If I use my money more wisely, I'll have more time. That will make me more happy to be with who I love. It brings those things together. Now, we might think that that is generally a selfish notion. I want more because more is better. But what is communication and what is a channel? A channel, very simply, is a connection between two nodes. So if I increase my bandwidth channel, it's going somewhere. So if I increase the channel to my wife, I've increased the channel somewhat, and the two of us together, collectively, have increased our mutual bandwidth. If I do it with my kids and add them in, I've increased 5 bandwidths. If I increase my bandwidth to people who work with me, my 23 team members, I get 23 bandwidths. Starting to get the exponent? But if I increase it to everyone, what has happened is I have an infinite increase in bandwidth. Remember the math. The bandwidth increases by the log of 2. The radius of the circle increases by pi r squared. Start playing with those numbers, you little fellow math geeks, and we can get to some really significant change. But again, why does that matter? What happens if I put more money in the collective world bandwidth? I decrease scarcity everywhere. What happens if I put more time in the collective bandwidth of the world? We have more time for better things, to do better things for all. What happens if I increase the bandwidth by increasing happiness of all the people around me? But most importantly, what happens if I put more love in the bandwidth? More love in the bandwidth creates vast global expansion and abundance. And love in equals love out. And in the words of a great poet, John Lennon, all you need is love. And that, my friends, is real wealth. Thank you.